From the largest and most powerful optical telescope in the world to a massive deepwater port that could threaten the balance of power in the region, and a continent-spanning railway that would run for thousands of kilometers across 3 different countries. Here are the top 10 biggest megaprojects in South America. Starting off with number 10, the Extremely Large Telescope, or ELT for short, at $1.6 billion. Astronomy is a topic that isn't usually discussed on this channel, if we're honest, but there's actually plenty of insane megaprojects to talk about in this field. One such example is the fittingly named Extremely Large Telescope located in Chile, which is, well, exactly what it sounds like, an extremely large telescope. With its primary mirror having a diameter of 39 meters, it'll become by far the largest optical telescope in the world. Its name makes a lot more sense, considering the fact that it'll actually be almost 4 times bigger than that of the current largest optical telescope, the Gran Telescopio Canarias in Spain. An earlier concept of this project was even called the Overwhelmingly Large Telescope, and would have had an insane 100-meter diameter. However, this version was ultimately scrapped because, well, let's just say its design was a little too overwhelmingly large to actually be feasible. The ELT will be located on top of the Cerro Armazones in the Atacama Desert of northern Chile. This area of the country is known as being one of the most ideal spots on Earth for astronomical observations. In fact, many of the world's largest and most advanced telescopes are located in Chile. With an elevation of more than 3 kilometers, little to no light pollution, and mostly clear skies all year round, it's no secret as to why this place is considered a hub for astronomy. Once operational, the ELT will be tasked with looking at the furthest reaches of the universe with an image quality that's 16 times sharper than that of Hubble's. Construction on this project began back in 2017 and is expected to be completed by 2028. We stay in Chile as we move on to number 9, the Andes Renovables for $1.8 billion. When it comes to renewable energy, Chile is one of the fastest growing and developing countries in the world. As much as 55% of its power generation is already being produced from renewable sources of energy, and that figure continues to increase each year. The government has also pledged to convert 70% of its energy consumption to renewables by the year 2030. One project that aims to bring Chile closer to this goal is the Andes Renovables platform, which will consist of 10 wind and solar projects that altogether add up to a total of 1.8 gigawatts of installed capacity, which would be enough to power up to 1.5 million Chilean households. Construction on the first phase of the project, also known as the Condor Portfolio, began back in 2019. It consists of 1 solar and 3 wind farms, which as of 2021 have all been completed and are now fully operational. The second phase, also known as the Huemul Portfolio, began construction in 2020. It consists of 2 solar and 3 wind farms, 4 of which have already been in operation, while the one final wind farm has been left unfinished after the archaeological remnants of a pre-Hispanic ceremonial site were discovered on the construction grounds. Because of this, the completion of this final component has now been pushed back to 2021. Finally, the third phase consists of only one project, known as the Cayman Wind Farm. Work on this project began in 2021, however, it's been delayed following an arson attack that destroyed and set fire to the trucks that were being used for the construction. Despite this setback, the project is still expected to be operational by 2024. Heading over to Chile's neighbor to the north, we have number 8, the port of Chancay at $3.6 billion. Just a few kilometers from the Peruvian capital of Lima, China is building a megaport that would rival the country's biggest and busiest port. This is the port of Chancay. It's a deep-water port that'll be built over an area of 1,000 hectares facing the Pacific coast. Its facilities will be able to accommodate even the largest container ships in the world, with a capacity of up to 21,000 TEUs. For those of you that don't know, TEU stands for 20-foot equivalent unit, and refers to the standard size of one shipping container. For comparison, Peru's main seaport, the port of Callao, can only accommodate ships with a capacity of 15,000 TEUs. Construction on the project began back in 2019, and it's being done by both Chinese and Peruvian workers. The port complex itself is 60% owned by Chinese shipping company COSCO, while the remaining 40% is owned by Peruvian mining company Vulcan. According to its creators, the project is being built as a faster and more reliable hub for Peruvian goods to reach the Asian market, most especially China. With Peru's current setup, the journey from South America to Asia takes at least 35 days, with ships still having to stop at other locations, such as the port of Long Beach in California. This is because the port of Callao does not serve as a direct hub to Asian markets such as China. Once the new port is operational, however, this travel time could be reduced to as little as 20 days. Now, despite its potential benefits, some people argue that China's involvement and majority stake in this new port could actually be just a geopolitical move pretending to be a gesture of goodwill. Even the United States seems to be extremely wary of these developments. Having a Chinese port in Latin America could threaten the influence and security of the United States. Regardless, construction on the first phase of the project is already well underway, with the first docks opening sometime by the end of 2024. The rest of the complex is expected to be completed over the next 15 to 20 years. As you might have already noticed, the mega projects in this video become even more expensive as we go further down the list. And of course, we couldn't have possibly fit every single project in South America with just this one video. So make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this, and who knows, we might make a part 2. Now we continue with number 7, the Bogotá Metro line at $4 billion. Bogotá is one of the biggest cities in all of South America, and with a population of almost 8 million people, it's a little strange to see that the city has no rapid transit system to show for itself. Interestingly, Colombia's second largest city, Medellin, which has a population of only 2.5 million, has the only metro system in the entire country. Plans for a metro system in the Colombian capital have actually been around since the 1940s. However, because of various political and economic factors, the project never really materialized into anything. Finally, in 2019, a 100% Chinese consortium won the bid to design, construct, and even operate the Bogotá Metro over the next 20 years. Seems like China's been really busy in South America, right? The project will consist of a single metro line that'll cut right through the middle of the city. It'll have a total of 16 stations, and the entire system will be 24 kilometers long, while running mostly above ground. Although this new metro line will definitely help with the construction in the city, some experts warned that this project alone wouldn't completely solve the transportation problems that Bogotá currently faces. Only an estimated 7% of all commuter trips within the city will be accommodated by the new line. Construction on the Bogotá Metro began back in 2021, and it's currently projected to start operations in 2028. A second underground line has also been announced just last year by the city's mayor. However, this project is still in its early stages of development. Heading over to South America's biggest country, we have number 6, the Angra 3 nuclear power plant with a cost of $4.4 billion. Brazil is a country that has long relied mainly on hydropower for most of its electricity. The country's even second in the world when it comes to hydroelectric power capacity, behind only China. However, because of ever-changing rainfall patterns, droughts, and climate change, this over-reliance could soon possibly threaten the country's energy sector. Because of this, the government of Brazil has laid out plans that they hope to achieve by the year 2050 to further expand and diversify their energy sector. One of the goals of this plan is to increase the nuclear capacity of the country by an additional 10 gigawatts. As it stands today, Brazil has only one nuclear power plant, which opened all the way back in 1985. The Angra nuclear power plant consists of 2 reactors, which together have a combined capacity of 1,850 megawatts. This figure adds up to only about 2.2% of Brazil's electricity generation. But considering that it's all coming from this one facility, it's actually pretty impressive. Plans for a third reactor known as Angra 3 have been in place ever since the project was first conceptualized back in the 1980s. In fact, the entire complex was always meant to have a total of 3 reactors. However, many events, such as the Chernobyl disaster, an economic crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic, have delayed the project multiple times over the past 40 years. Once completed, Angra 3 will have a capacity of 1,340 megawatts, the highest of all three reactors. As it stands today, work on the project is still underway, and it's currently 65% complete. If all things go according to plan, the reactor is expected to be operational by the year 2026. Coming in at number 5, we are now approaching some of the biggest and most expensive megaprojects in South America. In the 5th spot, we have the Southern Peru gas pipeline at $4.5 billion. Although Peru already has a substantial mix of hydropower capacity, the country still relies on a significant amount of natural gas for its electricity needs. However, transporting this resource from the country's gas fields towards major population centers isn't an easy task. This is because most of Peru's natural gas extraction happens on the opposite side of the Andes Mountains from major cities such as Lima, Tacna, Arequipa, and Trujillo, which are all located near the Pacific coast. One major source of natural gas in the country is the Chancay gas project, which is estimated to contain as much as 380 billion cubic meters of natural gas. In 2023, this gas field alone contributed to 42% of Peru's electricity generation. In order to transport all these resources to the people that actually need it by the coast, the facility makes use of two existing pipelines. One of these pipelines terminates at the coastal city of Pisco for export, while the other one makes its way to the capital, Lima, for distribution. However, with the way these pipelines are currently set up, there's no direct way to transport natural gas from the Chancay gas fields towards the country's population centers to the south. Because of this, a brand new pipeline was proposed to address that exact problem. The Southern Peru gas pipeline will span a total of 1,100 kilometers and will pass through the coastal cities of Mollendo and Yo to be used in power plants for generating electricity. The pipeline will then continue south towards Tacna and Puno near the border between Chile and Bolivia. Construction on the project began in 2014 and even reached 30% completion. However, just 3 years later, it was ordered to be canceled by the government because of a lack of funds. Today, the project is still indefinitely paused as Peru continues to solicit bids from potential companies. Going back to renewable energy, we have number 4, the Patagonia Dams at $4.7 billion. Similar to Brazil, Argentina is also a country that heavily relies on hydropower for its energy needs, with as much as 35% of its electricity coming from this source alone. Because of this, the country also faces the exact same problems that Brazil does, with droughts and climate change. And with the amount of electricity that they have in reserve already dwindling each year, the need to create additional capacity is at an all-time high. This is where the Santa Cruz River hydroelectric complex comes into play, one of Argentina's biggest and most ambitious megaprojects to date. This insane undertaking will consist of 2 individual dams, which will both be built across the Santa Cruz River, the only river left in the country that has flowed uninterrupted from the Andes up to the Atlantic coast to the east. The first of the 2 dams will be the Nestor Kirchner Dam, which will span a total of 2.8 kilometers and have a height of more than 75 meters. To understand just how massive that actually is, it'll be even longer than the Three Gorges Dam. It'll be located 180 kilometers west of the city of Puerto Santa Cruz, near the Atlantic coast, and will have an installed capacity of 1,140 megawatts. The second and smaller dam is the Jorge Sapernic Dam, which will be located 65 kilometers downstream from the previous one. It'll be equally massive at 2.9 kilometers long, 43 meters high, and will have a total installed capacity of 600 megawatts. Together, these 2 facilities would produce as much as 5% of the entire country's electricity supply. Now, both dams are being financed by the Chinese government through a $4.7 billion loan. There they go again. I thought this video was supposed to be about South America, not China. Anyway, construction on the project began back in 2015, despite strong opposition because of its potential effects on the surrounding environment. Most critics argue that the construction of these two dams would threaten the extinction of some local bird species, as well as displacing indigenous communities who have inhabited the area for centuries now. Regardless of all of this, construction on the project is still underway, with the Nestor Kirchner Dam already 25% complete, while the Jorge Sapernic Dam is at 40%. Both dams are estimated to be operational by 2028. Staying in Argentina, we have number 3, the Vaca Muerta shale oil and gas project with $5 billion. The Vaca Muerta shale formation is probably one of the greatest natural assets of Argentina. And with as much as 27 billion barrels of proven shale oil reserves, the country quickly began working on extracting this valuable resource ever since its discovery. Today, the majority state-owned corporation known as YPF is the key player when it comes to the exploration, extraction, and production of oil and gas in the Vaca Muerta. As of 2022, there are a recorded 1,700 drilling sites in the region. But despite all of this, YPF seems to still not be satisfied with their current production and aims to invest a further $5 billion into increasing their shale operations in the Vaca Muerta for this year alone. But many Argentinians are against these developments. The process by which oil and gas is extracted from the Vaca Muerta is called fracking. It's a method that can be extremely harmful to the environment, as it can pollute both surface and groundwater, and also create irreversible damage to the surrounding landscape. Some locals are already experiencing these negative effects, with water supplies and farms becoming contaminated. Critics also argue that Argentina's continued investment into their shale fields hinders much-needed progress towards renewables in the country. Heading over to South America's biggest city is number 2, the Sao Paulo Metro Line expansion at $6.3 billion. Sao Paulo is a city that is notorious for its traffic jams. And being by far the biggest city in all of Latin America, it only makes sense that they also have the largest and busiest metropolitan rail network in the region. The Sao Paulo Metro serves as many as 5.5 million commuters every single day. But despite the extensive nature of the city's metro, it still isn't enough to serve every single population center in the city. To address this problem, new lines and expansions are currently being built in order to make the metro system even more efficient. One new line that's currently under construction is Line 6, which will run from São Joaquim to Brasilândia over a distance of 14 kilometers. This new line will also have a total of 14 stops and will be fully autonomous, no drivers. Construction on this segment began back in 2015 and is currently expected to be fully operational by the year 2027. Another upgrade that's currently under construction is the extension of Line 2 from Vila Prudente Station to Peña Station in Line 3. This new segment will be 8.4 kilometers long and will have 8 new stations. Construction on the Line 2 extension is currently being done in multiple phases and is also scheduled for completion by 2027. Alright, we've made it, our number 1 spot and the most expensive megaproject on this list, the Central Bi-Oceanic Railway Corridor, with a price tag of $10 to $15 billion. South America isn't exactly the easiest or most interconnected continent in the world. Traveling on land from either side of the continent is technically not impossible, but comparing this infrastructure to, say, North America or Europe, well, South America is clearly lagging behind. Because of this, there are actually plans to connect the continent's Atlantic coast on the west to the Pacific side on the east. This is the Central Bi-Oceanic Railway Corridor. It's honestly a bit of a mouthful. This insane megaproject aims to connect Puerto de Yo in Peru to the port of Santos in Brazil through 3,750 kilometers of railroad. The most obvious benefit of the creation of this railway corridor would be the increased connectivity between the countries it's going to pass through. Trade between Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil would significantly increase, as the cost of shipping goods between each other would dramatically decrease. Bolivia would probably stand to benefit the most, as it's a landlocked country that doesn't have direct access to the world's oceans. Almost unsurprisingly at this point, China, who would have thought, right? Has also shown interest in the project, as its creation would make it easier for them to assert their influence deeper into the continent. And with their recent investments amounting to tens of billions of dollars in infrastructure projects in South America, it wouldn't be too crazy to think that they would also be eyeing to potentially fund the creation of this trade corridor. However, as it stands today, this megaproject is still very much an early concept, and it isn't even certain if it's ever going to be built at all. After all, a project like this requires the cooperation of multiple countries over many years or even decades of construction. And we all know that that kind of commitment between different governments isn't going to be easy to secure. Alright, so which of these megaprojects are you most excited to see? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more about similar projects, you should watch our video about the top 10 megaprojects in Australia. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.